So I welcome everybody back. After lunch, I still see some people are still joining us, so we'll give it a few minutes so everybody can find a seat. All right. So this next session, parallel session, is going to be on two different collaborations that we had with the Network of Excellences. I should stay here, I noticed, yeah. It's on the Joint Strategic Research Agenda and Ecosystem Mapping. And we have our colleagues here, Trine, from TAILOR and Vision, I think, and Jero, also from Vision, and myself, Joachim from Vision, and Claudio from Vision. But of course, we're going to talk about the broader ecosystem here. So let me just briefly show you the agenda. The introduction part I'm doing now, then we'll have a sneak preview of the new Joint Strategic Research Agenda, and that's going to be presented by Frederick Heinz from TAILOR and Jessica Montgomery from ELISE, and they are actually online. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here. I understood that they are presenting from Helsinki. Or
they're in different places.
Or different places.
Yeah.
We're distributed at the moment, but that should not stop us from having a good discussion. So they will present, let's say, the latest version of the joint SRA, and then we would like to have a discussion with you, with the audience here, about any feedback that you may have, questions, also regarding the sustainability of this research agenda. After that, Claudio will present the latest version and the status of the ecosystem mapping, which is the mapping that also was shown this morning by Cecile, showing the overall view of the different locations and institutions that are involved in Europe on the topic of research on responsible AI. And again, we would like to have a discussion with you about what the status is right now, where the value lies, what is actually missing, how would you use it, etc. And also, what is a sustainable model to continue this mapping? Because we've received a lot of feedback about how important this is, and we do see the value ourselves as well, but at the same time, we need to realize that a lot of the networks are actually ending in 2 months or so. So the question is a bit how to continue with that. And one proposal is to join an Adra topic group, and Claudio will tell more about that. After that, we'll make it a bit more broader discussion about using the Joint Strategic Research Agenda and the ecosystem mapping as an example of how collaborations between the NoEs, given that some of them are stopping, but others continue and new ones may actually pop up, how we could support that as a community. And that's, let's say, the overview of the session. So let me just explain a little bit of why we make the combination here, because both the strategic research agenda and the ecosystem mapping had started already 2 years ago, I believe, and the second community workshop that we're having in Brussels, that was more or less sort of a kickoff moment, or at least at that point we got a lot of NoEs together and talking on these topics. And I think there are great examples of getting the networks to collaboratively join in on sort of creating something of value that precedes their individual networks. So really working on a, let's say, common European goal. And in that sense, both these activities have been instrumental for this. And it's, of course, the outcome is important, but also the process has been important in that. And I think we recognize the value of that, and we would like to, discuss with you how to continue capitalizing on the momentum that we managed to create. All right. Having said that, I propose that we continue with the sneak preview of the new joint SRA.
So, the overall agenda here, I mean, when it comes to this joint strategic research agenda, we did the first version last year. So what we have done, the overall purpose of this joint SRA is really to collect what has been done within the different strategic research agendas of the individual networks, and trying to combine, or not combine this, but collect this in a joint document so that we can show the excellence and the research that we are pursuing, but also the research that we see is necessary to go forward. And of course, we want to clearly illustrate this need for continued investment in AI research and development ecosystem. And basically, the principles that we have had is that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to synthesize and signpost, and we also want to take an additive approach, basically taking the union of the different strategic research agendas, but also trying to reduce the overlap. So of course there is some editing to make sure that we have include all the different things, but we don't repeat it over and over again. So maybe Jess, you want to add something?
Yeah, so it's been just on a year now since we presented this document to the last ICT 48 Networks meeting. And since then, a lot has changed in research, in policy, and in practice. We've seen the legislative debate about the EU AI Act. We've seen intense interest in generative AI, a new wave of public conversations about the impact of AI on society. We're trying to bring all of that to this update of the joint SRA, but these fundamentals haven't changed in the interim. So what we're still fundamentally trying to do is convey what the big issues are, the big research challenges are across different domains of AI, and why the work of the NoEs matters in the context of this rapidly moving technology and policy area. Can we go to the next slide?
So this was just the timeline for the first version of the SRA. So you can please take the next one. So basically what we have done the last 6 months or so is that we opened up the first version of the SRA for feedback from the NoEs. So basically we have convened this joint editorial board with representatives from all the NoEs. And we agreed upon this process. And in the first step, we asked for if there were major changes needed to the document. And besides what Jess already mentioned, that we need to add content regarding, or to make the generative AI aspects more explicit. No further major changes were identified. So we have added like an introduction about what has changed, or what has been the development the last year. We've also added one major research challenge related to this generative AI and foundation models. But when it comes to the concrete content of the previous SRA, that is mostly as it was. And then based on this feedback, me and Jess did the first version of this new material, and then everything was sent out again to the NoEs for feedback. We mainly got feedback from AI for Media, so they provided substantial feedback, and that has been integrated into the document. And now we're in the process of finalizing the second version of this joint strategic research agenda. Jess, maybe I should hand over to you.
Okay, shall we go to the next slide? So this slide is really highlighting that we've tried to bring together existing content from across the existing networks, many of which have their own strategic research agendas, or indeed updates, recent updates to those agendas. And there is a question about how we can best use the content being generated by some of the new networks as we develop this agenda further. But Frederick, should we go on to the research challenges now? If we go to the next slide. Because as Frederick was saying, really when we asked networks for feedback on what needed updating after the publication last year, the main piece of feedback we got was, well, we really need to be grappling with the issues that have been raised by large language models, foundation models, generative AI. So what we've done is added a research challenge to our existing list of 8. So that is building safe, reliable, and trustworthy foundation models. And now if you'll forgive a moment of coordination between me and Frederick as we move to the next slide. Frederick, what do you want to do here? Shall we talk through each of the challenges in turn?
Yes, you can take the next slide, please. Yes, exactly. So what we did was that we analyzed the previous 8 major research challenges, and then we saw how have we, what is the work that we have been doing, what is related to generative AI, but also where the kind of open issues are. And since Jess, you were leading this work, maybe you can go through it.
Okay, so the first challenge around building the technical foundations of safe and trustworthy ADR is really starting with the vision of what we want from AI technologies for society. So we know that we want respect for human dignity and rights, freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, these foundational European law and policy frameworks that we want to see embedded into our AI technologies. So the challenge we identified last year was, well, how do we build technologies that respect these rights by design? And since then, well, we can see generative AI impinges on all of the characteristics of trustworthy ADR that have been identified by the EU high-level group, which makes that need to figure out how to embed these values in technology design even more acute. Frederick, did you want to say anything more on this one?
No.
Great. Well, if we go to integrating AI into deployed or embedded systems, so much of the excitement about AI is about its deployability, its widespread applicability, and having these natural language interfaces from large language models should help us do that. There should be an opportunity for a new wave of AI deployment. But in practice, we see all of the challenges in deployment that we identified last year still remain current. These really arise from the complexities of integrating AI into complex scientific or social systems. So we need practical strategies and practical tools that can help overcome some of this complexity. Frederick, anything further on this one?
No, but I think it's maybe actually it's more related to the previous one, but we also see that if we actually want to build this trustworthy ADR, we will need new technical solutions. And I think that within the NoEs, we have already identified this, but also so we have already started the work. But I think it's good that we highlight the importance of this, especially for going forward. And I think that applies to actually all of these 4 aspects here.
Okay, so the third was enhancing human capabilities with collaborative AI and robots. I think we've got a slight echo, but I don't think it's our side, so I'll carry on. And so one of the things we talked about last year was this aspiration that we might have AI companions or collaborative ways of engaging with AI systems that enhance human capabilities and that amplify our work rather than being substitutive in some way. And the type of interfaces we can develop with generative AI really have supercharged that aspiration, that we could have something that worked alongside us and understood what we're trying to achieve. But there's a whole collection of challenges in delivering on that aspiration, from transparency standards around how data is being used or what these systems are able to do well and not able to do well, through to the type of design work that actually empowers users to work alongside technologies, to interrogate how these systems are working, and not to, for example, take the risk of accepting inaccurate answers. Then the fourth challenge was around understanding interactions between ADR, social needs, and socio-technical systems, so a big one. And I think when we last met, we were talking about society's aspiration for AI and the role of research development in helping deliver those aspirations. We've talked about innovation mission, the focus for those aspirations. We've talked about trustworthiness as a lens for understanding the characteristics we want to design into AI systems. And despite all those discussions, despite all this research, this progress in research over the last year, part of what we've seen is a new wave of concerns about the impact these technologies might have on our societies, whether it's the impact of misinformation on elections, labour market concerns and worries that people might be replaced by machines, the risk of dual-use technologies, enhanced risks around fairness and bias, and the kind of societal and environmental risks that arise as a result of wider use of AI systems. Generative AI makes it even more pressing to address all of these issues and to understand the impact these technologies are having on society. And maybe at that point, Frederick, do you want to come in on those two? And if we go to the next slide, you can take the next set of research challenges.
So I think, I mean, again, I think it's very much about kind of strengthening what you already said, because I mean, the last year, I mean, we have seen that AI has have even more impact on society. It's being picked up in even more places and is being used for many more different use cases. And I think that it just exacerbates the need for doing this in a trustworthy manner. And so, I mean, yes. So I think that's the main message. The next one is then advancing fundamental theories and methods. So going back to this, actually the core underlying methods and approaches being used to actually develop these models. And of course, we have been working on what's today is called generative AI for a long time, but there is also a need for new type of approaches in order to be able to actually address these challenges. And some of the things that we included was this kind of domain adaptation and fine-tuning of large models. We see the potential for neurosymbolic generative AI, but also the integration of external knowledge, especially if you want to make these generative AI systems more factual and correct. That could be one way to approach that. Jess?
And this challenge is partly reflecting that we're talking a lot about large language models today. The successes we're seeing today are based on a legacy of innovations. Future successes will be based on the type of innovations we're delivering today. So actually investing in those fundamental theories and methods will help ensure the health of the field over the longer term.
And then we also have this ensuring regulatory and legal compliance of these ADR systems. And again, we just see that trying to make these generative AI systems compliant with existing regulatory frameworks is actually a major challenge. Just to take one concrete example that I've been discussing quite a lot the last few days here is how do we deal with copyrighted information for training these models? How can we work together with publishers and others to find a reasonable way of both building very useful and powerful models, but also doing it in a way that lives up to the kind of providing for the rights owners and their concerns when it comes to these kind of techniques. But we also see major challenges related to transparency, and actually if we want to be able to satisfy the AI Act that has now been approved, I think there will be a lot of innovation and needed in order to actually be able to meet both these legal but maybe also more kind of ethical and moral concerns regarding these large generative AI models.
And maybe I'll just say here a particular thank you to Phil Adra-e for all of the help she provided in developing content for this challenge.
And the final one is then advancing hardware for safe and energy efficient interaction between ADR technologies, humans, and the environment. And here, of course, we see that we now have a new NoE working on Edge AI, but there is also a need for how can we find more energy efficient ways of actually building and training these models so that we can get similar performance but with less computation, and of course also making these more sustainable in that process. So there is also an interesting aspect related to more hardware. Yes.
Now, should we go to the next slide?
Yes.
So stepping back from the detail of the now 9 research challenges, really what we're hoping that these updates reflect is that progress in generative AI has raised 2 types of questions for the policymakers we've been engaging with. One is, how can we ensure that Europe plays a leading role in the development of foundation models? The second is, what impact is this new wave of AI development going to have on AI research, policy, and practice? So there's probably kind of 3 takeaways from these updates. Firstly, we want the SRA to help ensure that foundation models reflect European values. All of those issues we've been talking about around trustworthiness and integration into social systems. Secondly, we want to create an environment that ensures AI really works for all in society. That means tackling those issues around trustworthiness. It also means strengthening the digital commons and making sure we're creating an open public stack that is accessible to a wide range of people in the research and development ecosystem. Thirdly, we want to be able to position Europe to lead the next wave of innovation in generative AI. And that means, yes, investing in generative AI, but also continuing to invest in all of these fundamental or foundational research areas that enable progress in these fields. Frederick, did you want to add anything on this?
So, I mean, I want to stress the last point, because I think there is a risk, at least if we see where the kind of current developments are going, that it's basically about catching up to what others already have done. I think it's very important that we try to see what is the next big thing, and trying to kind of, rather than just catching up, actually taking the lead on the next generation. And here I think we do have a great opportunity in that if we really want to build trustworthy systems, we will need new technological solutions and approaches to be able to do that. And here I think Europe has a great opportunity to show the rest of the world how this can be done. And I think the NoEs that we represent here have the capability to actually do it. So I think this is something I wish that Europe would actually invest and try to achieve.
So we go to the next slide.
So I think that was basically the last one, I think. Yeah, because this the final one is more this. When we presented this last year, we had this kind of long list of more specific research topics that are actually covered in the document. So, I mean, there are just too many to go through, but this is just to give you a sense of the breadth of the topics that we cover in the joint SRA.
All right. So thank you, Frederick and Jessica. Sorry, apologies. So I think we want to bring the discussion to the audience here as well. Now I do realize, Frederick and Jessica, that you can't see us, but I hope that you can hear us, and we have some portable microphones as well. So I'm hoping that if there is audience questions, then you'll be able to hear and possibly also answer. I think Filarete has a question or a comment. Oh. Here.
Thank you, Frederick and Jessica, for presenting the roadmap. So my name is Bart de Brouws. I represent Statistics Netherlands, and I'm also involved in the TAILOR network, more from the users side than from the research side. So I was triggered by the comment that you made that we can benefit from the strengths of Europe. So my question is then, how exactly do you see that working out in this whole list of research topics. It's quite a long list, and we have many good research, so maybe we can tackle them all. But my question would be, where would you put your money in the first place to make the best possible use of what we're good at in Europe?
So, I mean, I can answer, but that would be mainly an answer from the kind of TAILOR perspective, because I think, I mean, in TAILOR, we have been looking at this integration of learning, reasoning, and optimization. And I think actually this neurosymbolic generative AI is really a great opportunity for Europe. We see now that generative AI is on the top of the Gartner hype cycle, and well, most likely to fall over the cliff soon, while we also see that neurosymbolic AI is now listed as a technological trigger. And considering that this is a topic which to a large degree has been developed in Europe, but that has global traction, and where we have the competence in all these different pieces that are needed in order to build these neurosymbolic AI systems, being and thereby making our generative AI systems more trustworthy. So if I were to pick one thing, that would be my choice. But that, as I said, is speaking more from the TAILOR perspective, since the joint SRA is supposed to be more this union of different things. We haven't singled anything particular out there. But just please add your perspective as well.
Well, yeah, Frederick, just to add to what you were just saying, what we've tried to do with the joint SRA is make a virtue of the diversity of research happening across Europe, showing the vibrancy of this research ecosystem. One of the things I think cuts across all of these areas is, and given the speaker's background, actually getting close to deployment is really what helps us understand what the next wave of AI development needs to look like. We understand a lot about research policy and practice, from really engaging with people locally in local innovation ecosystems to understand how to make use of these systems in practical ways.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
Thanks so much. My name is Rasa Wachita. I'm a researcher at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision, also a partner in AI for Media. My comment and question is a bit inspired by a session that we hosted this morning on interdisciplinarity. I think it's working, right? Can you hear me okay? Perfect. So this morning, yes, we engaged in a session on the value of interdisciplinarity, and we had a lot of really interesting discussions about this. And I was triggered by one of the comments you made towards the end of the presentation about saying that for trustworthy AI, we need more technological solutions. I would say that this is the last thing that we need, or if I would, as a humanities person, this would be on my priority list, probably at the bottom. I think we need to look at societal, cultural changes. We need to look at AI literacy, and that got me thinking about how do you see that our SRA could actually speak with SRAs in other communities, in other topics, in humanities, in totally different disciplines, so that we could actually inform each other rather than kind of creating these silos that, you know, this is AI research, this is technological research, how we can bridge these gaps.
So thank you. So I mean, first of all, a clarification. What at least I was trying to say was that I think the current technology will not achieve the vision that we're aiming for, this kind of trustworthy AI systems that can actually be used broadly in society. I think there is technological development needed to achieve that. But then after that clarification, I fully agree with you in the sense that I do think this is very interdisciplinary. Yes, we do need to understand how it interrelates with society, and that was also why we have this socio-technical aspects. We have one of the major research challenges, really, how does this work together in this larger context, socio-technical context. So I do think that's very, very relevant. When it comes to aligning with other SRAs, that's at least not something I have been looking at. So one thing to keep in mind is that our the main the ones that we're writing this for besides ourselves is of course the Commission, and then it's mainly DG Connect, and the particular topics within the Horizon Europe goals that they are responsible for are more the technicals. Actually, we had tried to argue that they should take a more interdisciplinary and broader perspective on this, but then I said that, well, our focus is more on the technology side, so therefore it does not really fit into our particular calls. But if there are other similar organizations or elsewhere where we can have this dialogue around how can we combine the more, as you said, humanities together with the technology and make sure that they support and complement each other, I think that would be very interesting to do. Jess?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely interested in thinking about the system as well as the technology.
Right, thank you. Any other questions or comments or ideas about where to take the joint SRA? Yes, Joost, go ahead.
Hi, Joachim. We have a couple of questions in Helsinki as well.
Okay, then I'd say you were slightly earlier than Joost, so go ahead, and then we'll get to Joost. Yes. Helsinki, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rebecca de Miguel from ELISE Alicante. My question was related to the previous one, also on the humanities side, on the research support side, and from the user side, my question is how we can get public engagement into the conversation. What I feel is that AI is being developed, and I don't really know if the scientific community is actually doing anything to listen to what society really wants and needs. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the impact of AI on society, but I wonder if actually the AI community is doing anything actively to find out what society is thinking and what it needs and what it wants. Thank you.
Maybe if I jump in first on this one, because yes, +1 to that question. You'll see in the SRA, there's a few references to participatory design. It's a way of kind of bringing affected communities into tech development. But it would be great to see that really kind of expand and grow as an area where we're working to align technology and society.
Yes, and I think there are a number of different things here. So first of all, I do think it's very important to have this kind of dialogue with broader society. So I mean, again, talking a bit more about the kind of TAILOR network. I mean, we have had this joint theme development workshops where we have invited people from different both companies and organizations to the dialogue. We have had a number of public outreach events. Actually, I'm here in Sweden at one of the kind of major outreach events here, and really engaging, talking a bit the public. So for example, I was talking in media today with the head of one of the TV stations on how AI and media is kind of influencing each other and so on. So I mean, I think we are engaged in a lot of these different discussions. I think there is, it would be even better if we could, of course, do it in a more structured way. But again, we have to remember, I mean, the NoEs are mainly research networks. So, of course, we should engage, but maybe that's not our, I mean, first priority. And then I think one other aspect that was also mentioned in a previous question is this question of AI literacy. So I think this is really important. How do we increase the understanding about AI among the general population? So I think there is also a lot of misconceptions, and if we can, and I think these misconceptions is also partly why there is this kind of fear for it. And I think by having a better grounding in a proper understanding, then I think we also would help reduce and to manage this fear that some people feel. And I think that's another important part, and that goes more into the educational part.
We are actually running very late and we still have to talk about the mapping. So may I kindly ask the people who still have questions to be short? And Frederic, Jessica, with all due respect, may I also ask your answers to be short, please?
Okay, hello everybody, my name is Joost Geurts. I work for INRIA and I'm involved in the Vision project as well as the Adra-e project. And so my question is not necessarily about the content of the SRA, but the process getting to it. So I'm interested to know if there was any change in methodology compared to the first version, or that you foresee any lessons learned that you are doing differently with this iteration, and also on the so how you see this then moving forward and the impact it can have.
I think the short answer is no. I mean, we did use the same method for the second version, and I mean, as we have mentioned, it hasn't been huge changes. But when it comes to the way forward, so actually, I mean, the previous SRA was one major input to the Adra Strategic Research, Innovation and Deployment Agenda. And of course, we expect now that the second version of the joint SRA will be input for the next version of the Adra Shrida. So I think there is a clear kind of uptake or continuation of this work. But as we were also going to talk about sustainability, I think it's very important now that, I mean, the 4 original networks will end in August. And I think it's very important that the new networks, or the networks that have started, that will continue to take this over. And I think that would be great if they could form a new joint editorial board and continue this work and updating this. And of course, we would be happy to help, but I think it should be led by some of the active networks going forward.
All right. So I think everybody listens.
And one more question, one more comment from Helsinki.
Yeah,
still.
Go ahead.
So I'm Ruslan, a doctoral researcher from University of Eastern Finland, and just a little bit of comment to the previous speech, because I heard the thought that in order to work with AI, we have to make it essentially absolutely explainable. We have to fully understand how it works. But actually, that might be a logical mistake, because think about it. All the time we work with other people, and humans are not inherently explainable. So we cannot really take out the brains of other humans, stick the electrodes and figure out how the neural network of these biological organisms work. But still our society, it kind of works with these unreliable, not always explainable things. And we have developed so many institutions to make our society, make our whole system out of humans function. So yeah, we do not need to have absolutely explainable or interoperable system in order to make it useful. Thanks.
And I mean, I think from my perspective, I agree with that. But I think it's more finding a reasonable level of transparency and reasonable levels of explainability, and also to make people feel that they can trust the output. And in some sense, I think probably interpretability is much more important than explainability. But in the end, it's all about social acceptability and trustworthiness, and finding sufficient means of achieving that.
All right. So I think it's a good moment to continue with the next topic of this session. So I want to thank Frederic and Jessica very much for your contributions. Of course, there's much more to say on these topics, so I do hope that if people have some more questions, that they know how to reach you. Also, during the breaks, there's more opportunity to discuss, and also Trine is here, who is very knowledgeable on this, at least the organization, but also the content of the Joint Strategic Research Agenda. So do know how to find her or find us. Let's continue with the AI ecosystem mapping activities. I'm not entirely sure if Helsinki and Frederic is going to be online. If so, at least we've seen you, so you know we're there, and it gives us a sense of a distributed pan-European activity, so I like that actually. All right.
Joachim, this is Chris in Helsinki. Can I just quickly say, so we don't have an on-site speaker for this session, but we're still watching.
Okay.
And we'll still take part in the discussion.
That's great. Yeah, good to hear.
Can I ask a question? So we started with the microphone. No, it's just for him. Will we run over or will we end like?
Right. So just discuss with Filareti. We have like 10 more minutes, so we'll end at 3:40. So we'll aim for that. Yeah, great. So Claudio, go ahead.
Thanks, Joachim. So yeah, we're doing a little bit of a switch to a different topic now, the ecosystem mapping, also a strategic topic here. And I wanted to take a bit of time to explain what we've done so far. But I wanted to spend most of the time to actually show what we have, and we want to know what you as an audience, also the people in Helsinki, from your position find interesting and would like to see. So we want to know user needs, basically, from the community. That's why I'm standing here. But first, a brief history. So Vision started this together with the Networks of Excellence. The goal was to make an overview of what's happening in those networks. We decided to use a survey to collect data from these, well, at the time, 4 networks. Then it became more, and now it's 9 networks. We've collected from all of these networks. We've agreed on a categorization of AI topics, both research topics and application areas. And we've made a prototype. So the intended value, back in the time when we were talking to the Commission about this, the goal was to have a navigation of the research and innovation ecosystem, to identify and visualize the excellence that is in that ecosystem, but also for organizations to show their affiliation and also to give more in-depth information. Well, we've been collecting data since October. Right now we're at around 80%. We're steadily heading for 100%, so we're very happy with that. In total, it means we have around 250 responses now in our data set. And it represents, if you look at quarters, you get a very similar graph, I think, mainly universities, RTOs, and then also industry is 1 quarter. And a few of these very special organizations like public service media. And if you look at how it's spread across Europe, it's very well spread. With a couple of countries, as you can see, they're darker blue, they are more represented. I wanted to show you the features of the prototype. So if you go to this link, you can, if you want to type it in while it's here, go ahead. But it has basically 3 features at this point, the prototype. So first of all, a shared language. Second, you can see detailed reporting on organizations. And third, what I also found the most interesting is these high-level overviews of an actual map, but also of topics and application areas. And I wanted to go through them, and to be sure it works in the setup, I used screenshots. But if you go to the link, you can also do it yourself. So first of all, it's a shared language. So you can see here one of the tabs, the topics and application areas. You can search by a keyword. You type in the keyword of your choice, and you can find organizations that work on it, as you can see here on the right side. But you can also select the topic. So, for example, I clicked here on association analysis. And then you can also click on a company, and you get their information. But you can also search by topic through the map. So this is the first view you get. And here I selected deep neural architectures. I want to know which organizations are working on that. I type it in, I click on the topic, and then you get the map, and you can see which organizations across Europe are working on this. And as you can see here, I selected industry. And then you can even see which of these organizations are also active in industrial application areas. This can help me find a potential partner or a potential solution I could work with. Then when it's about the more detailed reporting, I can click on an organization, and as we had them answer in a survey, we know the research topics they work on at usually a lab level or a research group level, and also the application areas. But there's also some more information like the amount of people that are working there, the person you can contact to get more information or to establish a link, and also, of course, the website. You click on the organization and you can also see a more specific subtopics they are working on. It also gives an overview. So using the filters, you can get a very fine-grained view of types of organizations that match your criteria. So here, for example, I filtered by computer vision, in industrial applications again, but I specifically looked for organizations that do applied research or educational activities. And here you can see it's also well spread across Europe, by the way. It gives me a list of search results, and I can further make a choice, for example. What we also have is the NOE affiliations. So if you click on the logos on the bottom, you can see where the NOEs are located, so which partners are there in the networks of excellence. And what you can also do is, if you see this, you can also filter. So you can see what are the specializations of the networks, what are the research topics, what are the application areas. Then another overview is the second tab, the statistics tab, where you can compare research topics with application areas and with the type of activity. So here you can see our, let's say, cross table of research topics and application areas. And what you can do this way is you can see which ones are, for example, the gaps, which ones are the strengths. So here, perhaps because machine learning is a huge topic, you can see it's very well represented. There are a lot of dark blue organizations, let's say it like this, which means a lot of organizations say they are European or world leader in this topic specifically. And you can see the differences between these topics. This can help with, for example, investment choices or with figuring out where to support. What you can also do, what I call here from lab to the market, you can also make a cross table from the research topics or application areas and the type of activity. So you can see where, which topic there's more focus on, for example, applied research, or there's more focus on fundamental research, which can also give a high-level overview. I think that's the last one. So this is the current prototype, and I wanted to briefly mention the next steps. So there are 3 steps. The first one is we're now talking with the AI on Demand platform, well, actually with AI for Europe, on integrating it on the AI on Demand platform. We are ramping up the Adra joint topic group that is supposed to take this forward after Vision has ended. And we are also gathering user needs, as I said. So if we look at the integration on the AI on Demand platform, we've made a roadmap. So first we are integrating the data, then we are adapting the tool that I showed. So it actually talks to the AI on Demand platform. And then we will establish the connection. So it also has, for example, the URL is not the long URL you just saw, but it's a URL from the AI on Demand platform. And then it's also up to the topic group for further development. So the topic group was an initiative of TNO, UCC, and University of Twente, because we are part of different initiatives of similar efforts. And we don't want 10 different mappings. We want one mapping that has the actual, let's say, leverage or actual network effect that people actually go there and fill in their information. Because if you have 10 of these maps or cartographies, then it will be too dispersed. We did this because of our backgrounds. We've been working on this for a while now. And we've had a couple of meetings to give this topic group a certain shape. We bring with us certain related initiatives. I won't go into this actually. I think what's the most important part here is maybe the intention of this topic group. So we wanted to be a way to have a diverse and democratic place where people can contribute and talk and decide with each other what it should look like, because it has to be from the community. So from the research networks, but also from industry that's participating, and of course the public sector. We also think it is a way to represent these organizations, for example, in talks with the Commission, but it is also a way to have oversight on the development of this tool in the future. I think I'm going to finish on this slide because I think this is the most recent, so the latest development. We've been talking to the European Commission. They would like to use this for example, funding policy decisions or informing their own policies, reviewing capacities, capabilities, and also to support networking across the community. We're talking today on the MAN platform, as I said, to bring it and to integrate it. We want to converge with other mappings, and we've had a first brainstorm with the topic group to exchange lessons learned from these different initiatives, to think about the personas. So you as a professor or you as a policymaker have a different information need. So we have to think about that. And we also have to update the process for coming up with a topic classification. We've had, it took us quite a lot of time to actually create this categorization, because it's also a process of agreement. It's not just a rational procedure. So it's important to take your time for that. And the open questions we have are what are the incentives for users to actually keep their data updated, which is a very, all platforms have this question. And of course, what's the long-term sustainability? And we think the joint topic group is a good first step towards that. And I'd like to keep it here. If you want to stay in the loop, you can join our mailing list. The topic group is now available, or at least you can find information on it on the Adra website. So if you follow the QR code, you can sign up. So thank you. And
thank you very much, Claudio. So this is the part where it's going to become a little bit interactive, because we're going to open an empty and ask you questions. But first, is there any specific questions, including in Helsinki? Is there any specific question for Claudio? If it's in Helsinki, can you please just speak up, because I don't see you. Okay, well then, this is the time I'm going to ask you to put your smartphone down and also your laptop down, because I'm going to need you to look at what actually we have prepared for the MMT. Can you go to it, please? So we have basically 3 questions for you to have just as a community engage in what are the next steps for the mapping. The Commission has expressed a strong will that this mapping goes to the AI and the MAN platforms, but it's a place. What will become of the mapping, how it will be sustained, is another discussions to have here. And for that, I'll wait for the technique. No, I should, okay, I should make an emergency jokes for the time you get connected. So let me, you saw that we have reached 80% answers rate. So show of hands here, who has been already on the mapping? Okay, a reverse question, who has never been? Okay, you go and you register your organization, please.
Is this one yours?
We actually have a more detailed view. Claudio has been nice, he just shows the overall response, but we have the response per NoE, so we kind of know who is not. Yes!
To share the screen first.
So the first empty questions is actually there is a sustainability questions behind this, is how do we make it financially livable or sustainable? So would you be willing to pay for having access to this mapping? Now this is where you can come and answer us, and if there is any remarks or comments, just come in, please. Don't shoot off hands.
I think to clarify, what's asked here is that for what type of information would you be willing to pay, right?
Yeah. This question is actually related to the question of the persona that Claudio was just mentioning. Who is actually is ready to come to the platform. So what kind of users? At the moment, we had an exchange with the Commission from their perspective, but we would they are not the only users of such a mapping. There are going to be many other people that can use it. And nothing is happening. Is it big? Yeah, see people can, voila. I feel better now. So anyone would like to comment or say why? Yeah.
Yeah, I represented a public the organization, and I personally I think this should be a public service. So if anybody is going to pay for this, I think it should be the European Commission, because I think it's an important part of the European infrastructure for understanding the AI ecosystem. And my strong belief is that for these infrastructural things, that's government, so in this case European Union, who's responsible. I can imagine that commercial parties have a different perspective and that they're willing to pay for it, but that's not my take. Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. This is it's a position. Shall we go for the second questions? So, at the moment, you have seen the possibility, well, Claudio make you snapshots of the different tools that are currently being developed, but surely there will be other usage because there will be other users. So what would you like the mapping to do? What information we would like to get? Identify gaps. One of the questions that we have is to see how to make it an incentive for the organization to come. We already know some sort of actions that we have to do now. First, we have to put in place a process for regularly updating the taxonomy. We spend really a lot of time talking about the taxonomy inside the NoEs. We know that this is an evolving technology and an evolving ecosystem, so we will need to have a process in place for evolving the taxonomy, and we will work toward that. This is one of the first actions. But then we need the people to come and put the data in it. So what kind of incentives can we think about here? I see somebody has read burning research questions. Is he or she? Would you please develop that, please?
So my thought around that was, we're all working as scientists towards a certain goal you have in mind that you prioritize as well as related to your SRA actually. And it would be good to go over what's sort of the common thought that you have in the ecosystem that should be the first to address. So that's why I wrote burning research questions.
Then also in some sort of a democratized approach, we should not also shut up the one little research group who has actually a competitive advantages also. Don't you agree? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Claudio, do you have comments on what you see?
So that one sticks out indeed. I see a lot of finding people, finding organizations. I'm happy that that need is there, at least it seems like that. And the question is, of course, the granularity. I see filtration by field or expertise. Who's good in X? What is X? Is the question, of course. Joining project consortia. There are also, I think, services right online for that. So maybe that could be collaboration potentially.
When we speak with the European Commissions, one thing that they already say, the first usage that they want to have, and I quote here, is for funding policy decisions. So it's really to decide where to put the money for in the next work programs. No, I'm not, maybe not necessarily the work program, maybe not necessarily Horizon Europe or digital, but this, as I mentioned, really clearly funding policy decisions. The second thing that's mentioned was networking. So we know that we're going to have this already. So here I see convergence. We actually raise a follow-up of cascading question behind regarding just the granularity, but not the granularity in terms of topics or taxonomy, but more the granularity in terms of organizations. To which level should we go? Because we can have a university which do everything, and then we want maybe to have the mapping at the level of a department or level. So is there anyone who has an opinion on this in this room or in Helsinki?
Just checking, you mentioned this first topic from the Commission of funding policy decision, or deciding on policy decision and funding and so on. I think that's actually covered here by all the people that that are mentioning overview and insight in trends and so on. There only is a different wording than the Commission uses typically.
Yeah, no, so on the granularity where you need to go. So I think the finest granularity you can get, it gives the most useful information. However, it's also the most difficult to get to, because if you get to a high level of granularity, you need to make sure that you have some sense of covering the domain accurately that you try to represent. Also, you get into the problem of biases, so how you present a partner. So I mean, the question becomes very difficult once you get to a detailed level.
So what we realize is actually that we need to put in place a governance structure for this. Claudio has put it, but at one moment there will be a need to have a decision taken. We stop the granularity at that level. So any inputs are there, or there would be welcome to guide us. I think we can go to the next question. So
just a reflection looking at, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a reflection looking at all of the responses. It seems that reliable and up-to-date current content, that seems to be kind of a common theme, which of course is difficult because it's time-intensive to actually keep updating content. But I think this kind of the idea of follow-through and monitoring how the ideas are being developed, that would be really helpful. So for instance, in relation to what you mentioned about the burning research questions, right? Like, okay, so these are the questions. What are the activities that actually emerged from these research questions? Who's involved in them? You know, can we kind of make an observatory of how we went from that point, you know, chronologically basically developing what has been happening in response to this?
Yeah, so just on the policy making, obviously that's a high risk thing, because obviously if the policy is wrong, then it has a dramatically bad impact on us, right? So the tool is super. And there's only so many things you can actually build into it over time, because there's only so much resource that goes into building something like this. One thing that is missing, and it might be worth considering, is how the participants in the networks work together. So that could either be through projects or through publications or whatever, but to give a sense of the communities, of the sub-communities. Because, you know, for example, if there's a topic and there's lots of big bubbles, you know, it's great that there's big bubbles, but it would be nice to know, are the big bubbles working together, or are the big bubbles basically competing with each other? You know, and I think, and if there was some sort of collaboration graph in there, that could help. And there's lots of ways of doing that, maybe just through EU projects, for example, because that information is publicly available. In my own lab at the moment, we haven't released this yet, but we have developed you know, a nice set of tools for analyzing the literature and producing these types of visualizations, which are really, really interesting. When you look even at your own field, you see things that you didn't actually realize were happening. The other thing that I would say is it would be interesting to not just show the current data, but to show how the data is changing over time. Like, I think if look at generative AI and large language models, probably, you know, there's a sort of a jumping on the bandwagon effect, right? There were people who were working on this stuff before, you know, ChatGPT and so on, but then there's a lot of people who are jumping on the bandwagon. It'd be interesting to know who are who are the tried and tested and people who've been working on this for years, and who are the new folks. And it'd be interesting to sort of see that. So I think if there's a way of seeing snapshots over time, but also collaborations, I think it would really change the thing significantly. But of course, that's not easy, right? So that's meant as a suggestion, not criticism.
If I can just, I just would like to react to what you say, Barry. First, there is a reason why we create this task force with UCC. It's because just see you have made this mapping using the EU funding first approach. So that's actually something in our mindset. I just want to say that we will need them to decide which level of cooperation we look at, because looking at the EU project is very interesting, but we know it's just a small part of the community who's participating in those things. So that's an open discussion, but that's we take note of this. Thank you very much, Barry. And there is an evolution. Agree. No, I finished. I was about to give you the floor.
Yeah, but I think one other thing just on what you said is just because one participates in lots of projects doesn't necessarily mean there isn't a correlation between participation in projects and quality, for example. Yes. So the other thing that one has to figure out is a way of looking at collaboration in terms of activity, but also the quality of the participants. And so, there might be a participant who doesn't actually collaborate very often, or might not be involved in too many projects, but they might be stellar in what they do. So capturing that is interesting, because particularly from a policy point of view, because you might realize that there's a whole bunch of little islands of expertise that don't work together, and they're very high quality. And a policy question might be, well, how do we build bridges between them?
Yeah.
And maybe then, if we can capture it over time, one can see, well, has the policy instrument actually worked? Because often policymakers try to justify their policy by coming up with a set of metrics retrospectively that demonstrate that what they did works. And I think with a system like this, it could actually be objectively true. I think it's really interesting. Thanks.
Thank you, Barry. We fully align on this. I just don't want to undermine the efforts that such a thing will require. Please.
Yeah, just small thing to add to all the nice things that have been said so far. Originally, this is just sparked by a wish from the European Commission. However, I think that if you would like to serve the community, we sort of need to stay away from the point of view of the European Commission solely to their needs, right? Mm-hmm. It's to our needs as a community. And I appreciate very much that you have the survey, but should probably continue doing that in order to stick to the wishes of the community or our own ecosystem, instead of being diverted towards the Cordis route and serving the European needs mostly.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I don't want to insult the future here, but actually we're planning sessions at the EBDBF and at ADRF to continue asking the opinion of the community. So that's the way I'm happy to see where we're at.
Also, if you want to pay for something, right, it needs to stick out in its functionalities from LinkedIn or the other options that we have. So we should build something unique for what we need in the ecosystem.
I really want to underline the fact that we are looking at just the users and what are the user needs. The community is one of them, and it's not just a researcher, it's not just the university, it's not just the academy, it's also the industry, it's also the commission, it's also the public services. It can be a bunch of, we need to define them, decide on which we're going to focus first, and then which we're going to focus at the later stage, and after add layers of analysis. So fully agree with what you said. We have one more question, but there is burning question. Okay. If you can make it succinct, please.
Just a quick comment I wanted to emphasize was Barry was starting to say is that, just like the AI, those things have to be trustworthy, which means that you need a means sort of verification of things. What do? I want to see who is competent. I go to Google Scholar, I check publications, I do stuff, right? And if you have this sort of a let's say mapping, it should be linked to this matrix, to this thing to which you can verify. That's because if you ask people, everybody is good in everything. Right? And I think the ability to really not just go there and see this listing, but to quickly verify with the metrics that matter, for example, the scientific community, what is behind it, right? It goes to what Barry said. It's not just a statistic how many projects I'm in. You may have the dissemination partner in all the project that I may not necessarily be the best scientific partner for everything.
I understand your point. I don't have a response, to be frank, because I don't know how to do that completely, but point taken.
Yeah, one additional comment triggered by this direction discussion is taking. So this is about the AI R&D community, yeah? But I think it's in the end, it's far more important to see also where AI is actually being used. So that's the technology transfer, knowledge diffusion, and so on. And that's the area where Europe is a bit lacking. So we're top-notch in the research area. I think we're not underperforming compared to the other big geographical areas in the number of scientific publications. Where we really the lagging behind is in making the transfer to applications. So I think it would also be very worthwhile to extend this to the more the application side. Thank you.
I believe that what you said is aligned with what we want to do, because by design, this mapping is based on, is really research and academy oriented, because it was made with the NOE. By design, there is an over-representation of the academic world. That's why we partner with Adra, because they represent a bigger community, or at least a more diverse community, maybe not bigger, but a more diverse community. But there is at least a request from the Commission to go indeed toward more the industry, and I think it's also in our interest also to look at other industry, especially if you want to look at the cooperations, if you want to look at where the money is and what applications can be done. So I think that's part of, we are kind of aligned with what you say. Can we go? I would like to stop the question here, because we have still one more questions and we are running out of time, and that's my fault.
So this is a bit different from the previous question, because here it's really about when you think back at what I just showed, what would it have to do to be useful to you? So this is not about willingness to pay, but just what is actually useful information or a useful view for you in your position as a, I don't know, research lab leader or PhD or innovation manager.
Well, we had a first response here about the cooperations between the organizations.
Especially write it down, because then we collect it.
Yes. And we're going to give you a few seconds. There is really a networking aspect, which is how we collaborate, how we network all together. Info on success case, that's interesting. Can I ask the person, the gentleman or the lady who has met? Can I ask you to develop this, because I'm interested to understand what you mean by that.
Yes, hello. This is Mike Maton from VRT. We're a media company active in the AI for Media project. And looking from the industry perspective, which we are, we're often looking for others with similar problems and always have difficulties finding them. So having a look at the ecosystem, who's doing what, where we can find information, expertise, and success cases which can help us further in developing our own company would be very helpful service for us.
I see one which is very challenging, ranking EU versus US, China, etc. I'm going to be frank. I don't think this is we're going to do it, because I think this is too much asking for this mapping that has to find a sustainable way of living in the coming months. But if anyone has a cheap way of doing that, yeah, why not? Okay, I think we can.
Maybe on the ranking, just one thing. I think ranking like institutions or something, but actually providing broad idea which are the areas which, let's say, EU may be really very far and very well positioned, right, towards EU, China. Where are the areas where we may have the most deficiency, right, in broad areas, would be especially for policymakers and for staff really useful. So obviously not ranking on individual area, individual institution, but sort of this broad vision. Where are the areas where we need to gain the most? Where are we strongest would be really useful. for the policy making and for the funding.
If you allow me to be a little bit provocative, I think this is a perfect user in a consulting company or somebody who's doing can be a perfect user of the mapping for doing that, but not the mapping to do itself, if you follow me. Oh, sorry, Barry.
Yeah, so when the Commission, when the GRC started the AI Watch, I was involved in that. And one of the things that was challenging for the AI Watch was gathering the kinds of information we're talking about. And it turns out that lots of information that you really want to get is information that's rather manual. So for example, one of the questions up there is knowing what Europe is really good at. Like one easy way of doing it, but it's quite manual, is to go around to each of the conferences, HCAI and ECAI and AAAI and whatever they are, and ask them for the data that they present every time they have an opening session, which is how many papers came from China, how many papers came from the United States, how many papers came from France, what was the acceptance rate, what were the areas. So it's very manual, but you could have a relationship with these conferences where there's a template report that you want them to publish, that you want them to give you, and that is included somehow in your data set. And so then you could say, well, in recommender systems, the United States is way ahead of everywhere else, but maybe case-based reasoning, maybe Ireland is doing very successful, and of course you have to normalize that a little bit, maybe by funding or population or something. But I think that information is available, but it's rather manual to get. But it will be very, very interesting, and it is in some sense true information. It is reality. It is verifiable. But it's not something that you gather automatically. So it's something you would have to build up a relationship with a publisher or the academic societies. But I think we have all of the AI societies sort of backing this, right? So I think this information could be gathered very, very efficiently from them. So once a year there's a view of the thing that sort of shows here is the view of the publication performance of these countries in the last year. Be very, very interesting. Be a bit controversial. It would also give people the motivation to make sure that they publish a bit more and that they do a bit better, right? Because people are watching them.
Yeah, but we need to find the same thing for the industry after. So we try. It will be very challenging. And I think this is maybe a bit a step ahead of the mapping first. But I mean, we can put it as a potential future applications. There is one question which is remain open, and here is how do we incentivize you to come and update your data? And I would like to ask if anybody has an opinion or has an idea about how we can convince all of you to come back and update your data, or every year, or regularly, or following the new taxonomy. You have no? So, anyone would like to suggest how we can convince you to come and update the data?
I like the suggestion that was on the screen, which says a news platform. And I think that if you give people an additional space to make known what they publish about or what they are interested in a research question, that might be a good incentive for them to update their information.
So we're going to our more community platforms than where mapping is. Well, Joachim, one last comment, and then after, Joachim, please wrap this up.
Yeah, I think this is a catch-22 situation, because if you have many people on the list, then it will be used, and people they will update it because it's being used. That's the way that LinkedIn, for example, works. People go there because they know that's useful for them. Another element is also to make sure that doing the survey is doable, so to say. And when I did it, I really had trouble with all the detail in it. And I understand that the granularity is useful. It's also quite difficult to complete the survey that way. So try to find a balance between the information you need and what you ask from participants.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your input, all.
All right, yes, and this is going to conclude our session. So thank you all for being here, for your participation. Fully realize this, it's an after lunch session. It's always a bit of a challenge, but I think we had some nice discussion going. Also some very good comments that we received here. So thank you for that. Also thank the people online in Helsinki, Jessica and Frederick, for being with us. I do hope you found this inspired, that you were inspired here, and it maybe triggers some other discussions that you may be later having during coffee break or at the dinner tonight. If at any point in time some idea pop up and you think, ooh, I wanted to have said that, but I forgot, but now I know, do find us. We're still around. I think we're also around tomorrow, so there's still time to discuss. And yes, thank you again for being here, and have a good afternoon.